Far from being easy, the academic dialectics, heapery and labyrinths of Pope Carl in City of Pittsburgh's philosophy department, which was adopted by UW sociopaths, is anything but easy. Postdoctorate. And since I, of course, only got an associate degree, we're talking about postdoctoral counsel using extraordinary force in chemistry to manipulate a child, and then call it easy to figure out. That's dishonorable, which is my whole point about the game theorists in Seattle. Obsessed with games. I doubt, although I don't know, I doubt that everyone strictly in pit philosophy, whether it's logical positivism or phenomenology or dialectical materialism, really hold by the idea that the nature of reality is that there's winners and there's losers. I doubt that they do, but I don't know that they don't. I'm working on, the idea that you can describe what happened as refugees, such complexities that leads to refugees, what I call refugees of the spinner beanie, people who get tired of all the clockwork. And yet they're being led by people who are obsessed with all of the clockwork. For example, I got to thinking, being the brag bird, look at me, got to saying that it's foolish to catch flies with chopsticks in a rival dojo because your rivals will realize they can't beat you and go for their swords. It's a panic impulse. And of course, Reagan tipped his hand because I wrote about him in the Pit News. Pozvar called state police and they looked like they were going to cry. It was like that in Montana too. But it's hard to believe he didn't realize what they'd done. He talked to Nelson Mandela and Miles Davis and was obviously in touch with Peter Gabriel. He'd written the Federal Emergency Management Agency Declaration and lived out where Mel Gibson does. Mel Gibson was from Hollywood, like Reagan. I wondered sometimes about Pittsburgh's theory of a Reagan alter ego because he did appear to be stupid. His things he said were stupid. But the alter ego was that he was from Hollywood and used the presidency of the United States as one of his roles in Hollywood. He was like the man who framed himself. And it was hard for me to believe that I and I alone found that he was working with the men who developed the Burning Cross for the KKK. Nobody else seems to have realized that. So the alter ego was his role as a president. And the mechanics of the car theft network and Attica State Prison were the real Franken Reagan. Of course, everybody panicked, went for their swords, and I was taught an evil lesson. And then when you win, you're supposed to bow your head. That's what they told Joe Louis. Looks like you don't take winning seriously. How is people supposed to take, how is an individual supposed to take winning seriously when he's surrounded by cold-blooded cheaters? What are they going to do? Cheat me of victory? So they can say you cheated too? It's just dumb. I think the whole thing is dumb. What matters is what happened. Václav Havel was so enamored of Bush that he didn't credit Glasnost properly. The people around him seemed perfectly sweet. Melina Serna sent me a encomium for my eulogy about Olga Havel. But then his power structure with Trump came after him, brutalized us and raped Evgeny and all that. And it wasn't like they were different. Eno was on the phone with Putin. It was an inside game. The Ark. And they didn't even make adaptation. They maladaptive ideas. Obviously a maladaptive idea. It's obviously maladaptive. The idea of averting climate change is to bomb Gaza. How can anybody take Genesis and King Crimson seriously after that? I mean, they hate magnanimity. They identified magnanimity as it's like a monk entrapment. The Pope liked my comment about writing a prayer on water to God. But when you tell somebody that you were happy about connecting with being inspiring to the Pope, you suddenly become cursed with the identity of foiling by seeking recognition. The evangelical charm of doing a good work. It becomes inane. You're supposed to pay somebody for their work and injuries. Don't call yourself a labor union if you don't at least recognize that. The bad blood of the Veterans Administration. They go off to a war that someone like me tried to prevent. And then they say, we'll attack that little boy. And then we'll see what's what if he tells us if he's magnanimous. It's spinner beanie stuff, one thing after another. People have to learn to say that that's enough. The rancid intellectuals of UW dialectical bomb the issue of John Lennon's Houdini and Ronald Reagan's alter ego in the car theft ring of Pittsburgh, and whether you have a contract obligation to lie for him, whether Toon was behind the Texas school book, and whether back in the USSR referred to Lee Harvey Oswald and John Lennon. 50-50 deal in the murder of JFK and the Texas school books production. They're not even honest enough to prosecute the actual people who did it. They prosecute a persona, which is not an alter ego. It's not something that I adopted. It's something that they projected onto me and said, if you try to fact check what we say about you, you're interfering. I try not to play all big. It's not like I don't realize that making a big production of getting a tweet like from the Pope isn't silly. But he was a real person, he was real leader and refreshing, and it was possible to call him Holy Father. But like Leslie Katz called herself a realist, Tom O'Connor called himself a realist. It was ventriloquism for Toon, probably communicating that he's a realist. I don't know if I buy the idea that it's real, that the realism is winners and losers. Makes people stop prioritizing getting along. I realize that's where it's at the University of Pittsburgh most of all. But there's probably a few marginal people there who, like me, don't see philosophy that way, and we don't see the draft board makes it out like if you see philosophy as something other than winners and losers realism, then that's theology. It's like Erasmus's philosophy of Christianity. I don't really see it that way. It can be. I mean, you could certainly make yourself a philosopher of Christianity and argue that. But it seems to me that realism isn't exterminating all the beasts so you can't get crops to grow. That's not really realism. It's more like pit stupidity.